do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it, and you don't really love it, you're going to give up.
So just go and do it, try, learn from it. You'll fail at some things. That's a learning experience that you need so that you can take that on to the next experience. And don't let people who you may respect and who you believe know what they're talking about, don't let them tell you it can't be done. Because often they will tell you it can't be done, and it's just because they don't have the courage to try it.
It's very rewarding when you work on something you think is going to make a big difference. Yeah, it's a little bit harder, but I think the passion that one might bring with it brings so much more energy to that you're more likely to succeed.
You have to have an emotional investment in what you're doing. If you don't love what you're doing, failure is pretty much guaranteed. Success is not guaranteed by any means, but failure is much more likely if you don't love what you're doing.
If you know exactly what you want to be, you need to spend as much time with people that are actually that already.
You know, one of the things that I do is I question a lot of things. And you can do that in a good way and a bad way, but hopefully if you try to get people to motivate why they're doing something and their way of thinking, you know, the worst thing you can end up with is a situation where you get told, well, this is the way it's always been. That's the worst ever. That's a non-answer. Instead, ask yourself, given everything we have today, is there a way we can make this better?
If you're not coming up with 10 ideas a day, that's why I have this thing. If I'm not filling up this page every single day, then my idea muscle will atrophy. And I started this in 2001, and I still do it every single day. Like, you have to come up with ideas every single day, or the idea muscle atrophies. The good news is, after about 6 months of doing that, you're like a machine.
When it comes to changing the world, what I learned from Steve Jobs is, if you believe in a Macintosh, if you believe in iPhone, iPod, iPad, if you believe enough, then you will see it. Because other people will believe in it. Other people will create software. Other people will create products. So you need to foster the belief in what you are dreaming so that it becomes a reality, which is very different than saying, I don't expect anybody to believe it until I see it. You need people to believe it before they can see it.
Don't necessarily think that you have to have the home run and the huge Apple computer on your first start. I spent a long time in my life with skills just building little devices for fun. For fun is one of the key things, because that drives you to think and think and think and make it better and better and better than you ever would if you're doing it for a company. Build things at first for yourself that you would want.
For somebody aspiring to, take things to the next level or to even surpass their wildest dreams, there's always going to have to be an element of luck. But I think more important is putting yourself in a business that can be ubiquitous, that really doesn't have limits. Because otherwise, there's always going to be a grind to it. But if the business, if it can't be something that you can visualize every business using or every consumer using, it's going to be tough to scale to be big enough or to have the perceived value.
Because when you're trying to differentiate, when you're trying to do something different, there's going to be that gut moment, that gut sense. Is this right? Is this not right? If you're not having doubt, you're not pushing the boundaries far enough.
This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist?
Don't think about how do I get big fast. That will happen if you actually build something super meaningful and super important. So don't think about, what is the quickest way to success? Think about what is the best way to building something important that the world really needs.
I have to want this to exist in the world. I have to not, so it's a similar rule, just say, if this was successful and I had nothing and I was not involved and I got no money off it or would I want it to do well? And that's a great check, I think, to know if you really feel good about the idea and can be passionate about it.
The hardest thing to do is start. You have all these ideas and everyone has an idea, but it's really about executing the idea and building the idea and attracting other people to help you work on the idea. That is the biggest challenge, but the way to begin is to get the idea out of your head, draw it out, talk about it, program it if you're a programmer, or make it if you're building something.
You don't have to be the best, but you have to be dangerous, right? You have to learn just enough to be dangerous to build an idea, concept it, and show it to the world. And then it turns out there are lots of other people, including all 170 employees that work at Instagram, who are much better at doing all that stuff than I am.
One way to conceptualize what makes a good product is, good engineering is part of it, good design is part of it, but really it's, one way I think about it is maximizing the probability that someone shows up at the front door of your store or your website or whatever it is and ends up with a solved problem.
And oftentimes the best methodology is to start with the perfect experience with just one person, get that right, and then figure out how to scale something great instead of scaling something not so great and then trying to improve it. That's really hard to do.
And so I think when you are starting a new business, you don't want to go after giant markets. You want to go after small markets, and you want to take over those markets quickly.
And there are a lot of people from whom we can learn a lot. And I think the one piece of advice is don't underestimate anyone you come across ever. Right. Like whether they're, a blue collar worker waiting for the bus, or they're, helping you at they're the server or bartender at the restaurant, or they're a lower ranking employee. I mean, the smartest leaders I've ever seen have always gone around the room and asked for everybody's opinion.
And so it's not just about doing focus groups, it's not just about double checking your vision, it really is about integrating this concept of testing our ideas rigorously throughout the product development process, throughout the marketing process, even as we scale up.
But what you really need to do is think about what is the smallest possible test that I can run for this idea, for this concept, for this theory, get it out there, and get customers using it. Because your customers are going to be the ones to tell you if it's really working or not.
What this all comes down to is doing something exceptional for your users, whether it's in community, whether it's in connection, or whether it's in design. This is our big advantage as a startup, is that we can actually get away with doing this. We can make this the core part of why we're doing business.
I do think that one thing that's important is, especially if you're a founder or a technical founder, is to realize that you can't do everything, and even if you can, you shouldn't.
So many things go wrong when you're starting a company, and often I think people ask, what mistakes should you avoid making? And my answer to that question is don't even bother trying to avoid mistakes, because you're going to make tons of mistakes, right? And the important thing is actually learning quickly from whatever mistakes you make and not giving up.
the two things we really zero in on people are, two things. They sound simple, they end up being very difficult. Courage and genius. Courage is the one we talk about a lot because it's the one that people can learn. Courage, which is to say not giving up in the face of adversity. Just being absolutely determined to succeed, is something that you can like force yourself to do. It can be very painful. You can force yourself to do it. The genius part is a little bit hard to force yourself to do. Courage without genius might not get you where you need to go, but genius without courage almost certainly won't.
If you don't love it, you won't make it through the long period of pain that is inevitable. So make sure that you take care of yourself during the process. Make sure that you take care of your mental health, your physical health while you're doing it, because it's a long road.